A multinational effort to excavate key regions of Antarctica in search of artifacts from a flash-frozen alien civilization created by refugees is destabilizing the continent's massive ice shelves, according to Secret Space Program whistleblower Goode. He furthermore reveals that secret military bases in Antarctica are using some of the artifacts for weapons development in violation of the 1959 Antarctic Treaty, which stipulates that the continent's resources will be only used for scientific purposes. This article is the third in a series. Corey's written contribution to this final installment has led it to being our first collaborative writing venture. To identify who is writing for the reader, I, Michael Salla, will take the role of the narrator and distinguish when Corey is directly contributing in his own words as opposed to me paraphrasing his briefing material. Disclosure of the Antarctica ruins is still imminent, Corey reports, as a number of key variables impact on when and how much is to be revealed to the world about the discoveries while maintaining secrecy about the ongoing military programs to weaponize alien artifacts. In a detailed briefing given to me on March 16, 2017, Corey shared additional details about the pre-Adamite civilization, supplementing the data he previously put out. This new information was originally slated for release in an article, Endgame 3, as the sequel to the popular Endgame 2 article and video, which focused on secret Antarctica excavations. Corey said earlier that the extraterrestrial civilization identified by him as pre-Adamites first arrived 55,000 to 60,000 years ago and established outposts all over Antarctica, which notably has a landmass almost twice the size of the contiguous United States. He described them as standing approximately 12 to 14 feet in height and possessing elongated skulls. Corey also described how they created a hybrid species, Homo capensis, according to anthropological classification, which became ruling elites or demigods in ancient South American, Asian, and European societies. In the March 16 briefing, Corey began by explaining that the pre-Adamites had established their main base right over ancient builder race technology, which included a Stargate or wormhole device very similar to that depicted in the popular science fiction show Stargate SG-1. Corey said that the show was an example of a soft disclosure in which the US Air Force took the lead in revealing key elements of the technologies developed by the ancient builder race, who had established a travel grid throughout the galaxy using traversable wormholes hundreds of millions, if not billions of years ago. When the pre-Adamites first arrived in Antarctica, they quickly asserted control through their advanced technologies over this area populated by human settlements at the time. With their advanced medical technologies, the pre-Adamites then began many genetic experiments and created hybrids that became a servant class. Corey previously released his description of the flash-frozen bodies of the bioengineered hybrids, or Homo capensis, during his latest visit to Antarctica in early January of this year. Corey explained that the pre-Adamite programs interrupted 22 genetic experiments being run by human-looking extraterrestrials first established 500,000 years ago. In a prior report, Corey elaborated that a superfederation comprising 40 to 60 of these races had established competing genetic engineering programs with surface humanity. Corey also described how the pre-Adamites engaged in conflict with the human-looking ETs running their 22 genetic experiments, as well as reptilians doing likewise for global influence. Given that the pre-Adamites had established a physical presence on Earth, this gave them an advantage in establishing ruling bloodlines over the Americas, Asia, and Europe, as explained in a previous article. At the same time, humans who had escaped into the Earth's interior to avoid multiple surface catastrophes monitored how the different extraterrestrial races competed against each other for influence and power over surface humanity who was still recovering from global catastrophes. One of the inner Earth races that pride themselves on their pure human bloodlines, the Anshar, had a historic connection to the human settlements in Antarctica. However, the Anshar did not cooperate with the pre-Adamites because they considered them to be sociopaths in terms of their treatment of the native Antarctica population and other regions of surface humanity where they had established colonies. Corey said that the pre-Adamites treated humans in antiquity in a similar manner to how modern humans treat dogs in terms of crossbreeding for multiple purposes. The pre-Adamites, along with the reptilians, were a big problem for all humanity. The Anshar were part of a confederation of worlds that sought to make things better on the planet by providing knowledge and technological assistance as described in the Sumerian cuneiform texts. In a previous article, I discussed how the Anunnaki, as described by Zecharia Sitchin in his Earth Chronicles series, involved the Anshar and other off-world groups, according to Corey's sources. To help clarify this point, Corey adds, quote, Anunnaki was a general term that meant ET or those that come from heaven. This definition will upset some people, so be aware. The reptilians, the Nordics, the Ebens, and the Anshar were interacting with the ancient Sumerians to assist them in the recovery of their civilization after the great catastrophe that destroyed Atlantis. The Anunnaki were indeed the reptilians, but the other groups that interacted with them were also referred to by this same name, according to my info in the programs. End quote. Corey said that a small number of pre-Adamites survived the catastrophe that flash froze Antarctic regions by going inside stasis chambers located in the largest of their 3 motherships. These ships are miles long and not 30 miles long as reported earlier. The additional information released by Corey suggests there are many risks in waking up the pre-Adamites who would likely attempt to reassert their authority by utilizing their advanced technologies, including the little understood builder race technology. Here Corey adds, quote, the groups in charge of these excavated locations are taking precautions, that is mini nukes with dead man's triggers in case of these becoming hostile. For reference, see the movie Prometheus. End quote. This leads us directly to the secret excavations currently underway of the pre-Adamites' bases and ships. Corey disclosed that excavations are occurring in multiple places in Antarctica by different nations, which in some cases are in direct competition to get the most advanced technologies. The goal is to eventually disclose some of these, but many technologies, especially those that are clearly extraterrestrial in origin, will not be released, at least to begin with. Corey said that all the nations involved in the Antarctica excavations are capable of making a disclosure announcement on their own, but they are all participating in negotiations to do so in a coordinated manner. Corey thinks the Antarctica disclosures will begin in tandem with prosecutions of the elites involved in pedophilia, human trafficking, and other crimes, which includes the blackmailing of leading politicians, academics, industrialists, and military officials. He says that the recent Trump administration action to sack 46 district attorneys was due to their inaction in moving forward with such prosecutions. Alternatively, the Russians, the Chinese, or smaller nations could begin the Antarctica announcements if negotiations drag out and the US fails to move forward. The former nations are part of what Corey describes as the Earth Alliance. This group has rapidly grown in prominence, with economic power mounting in Asia as global cabal Illuminati power centers in Europe and North America continue to gradually wane. This is best illustrated by a battle that took place over Antarctica skies in early 2016. It began when teardrop-shaped ships came out of the sea in the Ross Ice Shelf area and sought to escape into deep space. These ships flew out of bases belonging to a corporate-run space program called the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate. The ships in turn belonged to the Cabal Illuminati, who are allied to another program called the Dark Fleet. They were filled with global elites seeking to escape anticipated global chaos caused by the upcoming solar event. Dozens of delta-shaped craft suddenly appeared as the Cabal Illuminati's Dark Fleet vessels reached the upper atmosphere. The teardrop-shaped ships were badly damaged in the battle and had to turn back and return to their Antarctic bases. Corey said the delta-shaped craft inflicted far more damage than thought possible by such small craft. Corey also stated that the only thing known for certain about the attacking delta-shaped craft was that they were built using Earth-based technology on par with that possessed by the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate. This technology solely came from Russia, China, and Asian syndicates belonging to an Earth alliance. Thus, the battle revealed that the Earth Alliance had succeeded in bridging the technological gap with the most advanced space technologies recognized to exist. On a map of Antarctica, Corey has marked 6 bases belonging to the interplanetary corporate conglomerate, which he was taken to visit by an Anshar spacecraft in early 2016. The largest of these bases is the size of a small industrial city and located near pre-Adamite ruins. More ruins, some of which are poking out of the ice, are not too far away from other bases marked by Corey. The bulk of the secret excavations are occurring within the Ross Ice Shelf. This shelf exists over land rather than ocean, and drilling is occurring through more conventional science research projects like Andrill. Corey described 2 processes which are simultaneously occurring that are having a powerfully destabilizing effect on the Ross Ice Shelf and other ice shelves across the continent. One process utilizes a natural phenomenon that involves harnessing powerful geothermal vents caused by volcanic activity deep below Antarctica's landmass. The vents are releasing enormous quantities of heat that are being directed to melt the ice cover and are forming large caverns under the ice shelf. This has led to geothermal tunnels being formed all the way to the surface. One of these tunnels caused by geothermal vents that reach the surface is located roughly 5 miles from the South Pole. It is the same tunnel or hole witnessed by an anonymous Navy officer and flight engineer, Brian, who first reported his experience to Linda Moulton Howe in a letter on January 2nd, 2015. She has subsequently interviewed him and gained more information about his Antarctica experiences. In short, he described flying a rescue mission from Davis Station to West Antarctica, where he overflew the South Pole. He and his colleagues witnessed a large hole in the ice, as he described in his original letter. Quote, "Another unique issue with South Pole Station is that our aircraft was not allowed to fly over a certain area designated 5 miles from the station. The reason stated because of an air sampling camp in that area. This did not make any sense to any of us on the crew, because on 2 different occasions we had to fly over this area. One time, due to a medical evacuation of the Australian camp called Davis Camp, it was on the opposite side of the continent, and we had to refuel at South Pole and a direct course to this Davis Camp right over the air sampling station. The only thing we saw going over this camp was a very large hole going into the ice. You could fly one of our LC-130 into this thing." End quote. Corey said that he saw the bottom of the same hole when the Anshar took him into Antarctica in January 2017. The other process, which is also destabilizing the Ross Ice Shelf, is the use of large pressurized steam hoses to reach the pre-Adamite ruins. Corey elaborates, quote, "They are connected to large pressurized tanks in which large bags of water are hit with microwave beams to cause them to explode with steam, opening large areas. Fine-tuned excavations have been done with men holding pressurized hoses shooting steam. The melting ice is causing rivers to run under the ice shelf and lubricate it, causing it to slide even more, as well as producing collapse from the weight of the ice above as the ice heats up from the geothermal activity." End quote. In addition, there are excavations being conducted by other nations across Antarctica, which again are having destabilizing effect on all of Antarctica's ice shelves. Basically, the base temperatures of the ice shelves are on the rise, leading to ice melting and adding to the resulting water sludge, acting as a lubricant for the ice shelves to move. According to research scientists with the Mandrill project, the Ross Ice Shelf is moving at 1 foot a day. This is creating problems as the shelf moves over the pre-Adamite excavation sites, because the tunnels created to reach them have to be constantly lengthened as the ice shelf moves. Corey was told that disclosure announcements will begin with sanitized releases about the excavations of the pre-Adamite ruins by leading scientists that have been working on the excavations since 2002. Documentaries of it will feature only the terrestrial elements of the pre-Adamite civilization. All evidence of alien life and technology has been removed and will be kept secret. The Antarctica disclosure was to be followed by a limited disclosure initiative concerning the military-industrial complex secret space program, comprising the US Air Force, National Reconnaissance Office, National Security Agency, and the Defense Intelligence Agency. As discussed in part 1 of this series, however, Corey explained that a senior official in the MIC-SSP, dubbed Sigmund, now suspects that a more advanced Navy space program exists and wants to uncover the truth before the limited disclosure initiative moves forward. Consequently, while there is growing momentum behind a limited disclosure of the Antarctica excavations, there is also uncertainty over how this will occur. Will it begin with the prosecution of US elites involved in human trafficking, the Earth Alliance revealing its own Antarctica discoveries, or will there be some wildcard event such as the Ross Ice Shelf melting far more quickly than anticipated, revealing more of its hidden mysteries involving a pre-Adamite civilization? Corey has added important information about the pre-Adamites and their connection to the Homo capensis. World Bank whistleblower Karen Hughes first identified this group as a non-human species secretly exerting global influence. Corey explains, quote, I recently received confirmation that the scrolls that were removed by the Inner Earth Group were very important genetic bloodline databases that are super important to the human pre-Adamite hybrids that control much of the world through religion, the Vatican, and the financial system, London. Didn't Karen Hudes say she knew of a person with an elongated skull in London? End quote. The elite had planned on making an announcement in the future that these ETs were gods and they were demigods and we should worship and serve them. They were going to use the bloodline scrolls to prove their lineage and set up this system. Corey points out the major violations occurring in terms of breaking the Antarctic Treaty, which prescribes the weaponization of Antarctica. Article 1 in the treaty says, quote, Antarctica shall be used for peaceful purposes only. There shall be prohibited inter alia any measures of a military nature, such as the establishment of military bases and fortifications, the carrying out of military maneuvers, as well as the testing of any type of weapons, end quote. Furthermore, Corey points out that, quote, the R&D installations, much like Project Iceworm, are highly against the Antarctic Treaty that states no weapons will be tested or developed in Antarctica. Also, for over 50 years, American shadow government groups have controlled a former Nazi base for their secret space program and turned it into a major spaceport that not only houses advanced interplanetary corporate conglomerate spacecraft, but also manufactures and repairs certain types of these vessels. End quote. These Antarctica bases form an Antarctica version of Area 51. Significantly, Lockheed Martin, the same corporation that helped establish Area 51 as a secret aerospace development facility in the 1950s, was in 2011 given a $2 billion contract to manage Antarctica operations for the National Science Foundation. This suggests that Lockheed Martin is using its National Science Foundation contract as a cover for a highly classified and illegal aerospace weapons development program in Antarctica's Area 51. What Corey reveals above is indeed a violation of the Antarctic Treaty, which also states in Article 10, quote, each of the contracting parties undertakes to exert appropriate efforts consistent with the Charter of the United Nations to the end that no one engages in any activity in Antarctica contrary to the principles or purposes of the present treaty, end quote. This is where provisions in the Antarctic Treaty become problematic, since there are a number of non-signatory groups that operate military bases in Antarctica. Corey explains, quote, there are a number of other spaceports in Antarctica that belong to breakaway Nazi remnants, as well as non-terrestrial groups that have huge bases down there. It is not just the reptilian, as has been reported in the past. The reptilians inhabit giant caverns in western Antarctica. This situation clearly creates problems once a group like the Cabal shadow government military begin cooperating with one or more of the non-treaty parties operating in Antarctica in developing advanced weapons systems. Corey says that revealing the extent of military activities in Antarctica, quote, will make some alliance people very happy and a lot of the negative human groups very worried. This is a major violation of that treaty that could have huge ramifications. Cuban Missile Crisis type responses. We are already amidst a shadow civil war that is in extreme danger of becoming an overt civil war that some plan to lead into a world war as a last-ditch effort to depopulate the planet and consequently reassert their control over the survivors. The negative groups have never been so close to defeat. End quote. In closing, it is important to emphasize the ongoing scientific excavations of the pre-Adamite civilization has enormous implications for the planet. The alien artifacts, which include pre-Adamites in stasis chambers, are highly sought after by various groups. Some want to use these artifacts to disclose a sanitized version of an advanced human civilization that was flash frozen in Antarctica to kickstart the world economy and arguably act as a distraction from upcoming criminal investigations. Other groups, the Cabal shadow government, want to gain access to the alien artifacts in order to create a new world religion where the pre-Adamites are revived and even presented as gods to be worshipped. Finally, there are military groups that wish to weaponize the alien artifacts for use in ongoing space programs and for a decisive advantage in facing a possible future world war. Despite these contentious situations, it is important to focus upon the best possible outcome, and as Corey states, quote, "The negative groups have never been so close to defeat," end quote. Antarctica's secret history, extraterrestrial colony created elite bloodline rulers. Secret space program whistleblower Corey Goode has revealed more startling information about Antarctica and its history as an extraterrestrial refugee colony established roughly 60,000 years ago. He asserts that the alien refugees found advanced builder race technologies there that were created over 1.8 billion years ago. Equally intriguing is his claim that some of the extraterrestrial refugees are still alive today in stasis chambers located inside 30-mile-long motherships buried under 2,000 feet of ice below Antarctica's Ross Ice Shelf. In Goode's February 21st, 2017 Cosmic Disclosure TV episode, he stated that he continues to receive briefings from a US Air Force-run secret space program about the excavations in Antarctica being conducted by archaeologists, which began in 2002. In an earlier article, I described what Goode told me about the US Air Force briefings and what he had encountered during a January 2017 visit to Antarctica with an inner Earth civilization called the Anshar. In the Cosmic Disclosure episode, Goode provides more details and graphic depictions of what he personally witnessed in Antarctica. He describes the extraterrestrials as pre-Adamites, who were originally from Mars and a super-Earth, Maldek, whose remains now form the asteroid belt. During their long history, he says that the inhabitants of Mars and Maldek fought a series of high-tech wars back when Mars was a moon of Maldek. Approximately 500,000 years ago, these wars came to a climactic end with Maldek being obliterated. Maldek's remains hit Mars with such force that the latter's surface cities on one side of the planet were totally destroyed and most of its atmosphere was lost. This made life on Mars' surface very precarious at best and led to planetary evacuation by the Martian survivors. Billions of refugees from both Mars and Maldek found refuge on our present moon. However, the time of the catastrophe, our moon was another satellite of Maldek, but it was artificially created with vast living areas in its interior, as Goode has previously described. The pre-Adamites inhabited the moon for approximately 440,000 years, and at some point during this period, according to information received by Goode, the moon was moved into its present orbit around the Earth. Eventually, another conflict forced the pre-Adamites to the moon, and they had to quickly move to the nearby Earth. They chose Antarctica to rebuild their civilization due in part to the existence of ancient builder race technologies which were still functioning, as Goode explained. Then they, the pre-Adamites, as Goode said, end up on the moon for a period of time, and then somehow they ended up getting chased off the moon. There were some attacks that occurred, and after they fled, but their craft were too damaged to leave our solar system or make it to another planetary sphere. So since they had to crash land on Earth, they decided that they would go to this one continent that still had working ancient builder race technology that was 1.8 billion years old. The pre-Adamites only had 3 motherships to use to establish their new colony on Earth after a crash landing in Antarctica. It was the technology in these motherships that gave the pre-Adamites hope that they could rebuild their civilization. Goode said, quote, "Well, they only had the technology they had on these 3 craft with them. That's all the technology they had, so they had to cannibalize and repurpose that technology from the spacecraft once they had crash landed. And there were 3 that were extremely large. They were motherships." End quote. This is where David Wilcock, the interviewer, had some corroborating information to share from another whistleblower, Dr. Pete Peterson, about the size and location of one of the discovered motherships. According to David, quote, "And I want to point out that this was one of the absolutely stunning details in which I start to ask Pete Peterson on the phone, do you know anything about Antarctica? And he independently says they're going to announce that they found a mothership. He only knew about one, a mothership that was 30 miles wide, mostly circular in shape, that's been found under the ice." End quote. Goode describes the pre-Adamites who settled Antarctica, quote, "They range from 12 to 14 foot tall. They have elongated skulls. They were very spindly, thin." End quote. This suggests that the pre-Adamites were likely the prior inhabitants of a lower gravity planet like Mars, which would facilitate gigantism. After spending over 400,000 years on the Moon with its even lower gravity field, the pre-Adamites may have naturally increased in body height to finally result in their spindly 12 to 14 foot stature. On Earth, because of its stronger gravity, the pre-Adamites would find themselves at a clear disadvantage compared to the native inhabitants in terms of physical strength, speed, and stamina. This meant that in terms of geopolitical power, the pre-Adamites would have to rely on the advanced technologies they had access to, the most advanced of which were located in Antarctica. The pre-Adamites soon needed hybrids to act as intermediaries between themselves and the rest of the Earth's population. While the pure-blood pre-Adamites remained in Antarctica, close to their advanced technologies, the hybrid pre-Adamites would be used to rule over humanity in the different colonies established around the planet. As Goode explained, quote, "They had created hybrids because they could not operate in our environment very well. And they created hybrids of them and the humans that were here on Earth. All of the main pre-Adamites that were pure blood were down in Antarctica. There was a group of these pre-Adamites, of this pre-Adamite bloodline, that was in Central America, South America region, and there was another completely different bloodline group, both royals, in Asia and Europe." End quote. This is consistent with what the ancient Egyptian historian Manetho tells us about pre-dynastic times. The gods directly ruled over Egypt and then placed their offspring hybrids or demigods in the leadership positions. A similar scenario is described in the Sumerian Kings List, which suggests that these historic documents are not mythical accounts of prehistory, but accurate historical records. The pre-Adamites, however, were not the only extraterrestrial race active on Earth 60,000 years ago, according to Goode's sources. He says that among them was a non-human looking race, the reptilians, who quickly emerged as the pre-Adamites' primary rival in dominating planetary affairs. Goode described the conflict between the pre-Adamites and the reptilians and how to begin with the pre-Adamites having the upper hand due to their advanced technologies. However, the reptilians would slowly gain ascendance after a series of smaller catastrophes that were a precursor to an even more destructive geological event that was to come. Apparently, these pre-Adamites have been in conflicts with the reptilians for a while. These pre-Adamites, they stated, were not good guys at all, but were in some sort of a conflict with the reptilians and had actually kept the reptilians in check here on the Earth during that time they had crash landed here. There had been a couple of other smaller catastrophes that happened where they had lost their power, and the reptilians always find an opportunity to come back in a moment of weakness. During the major catastrophe about 13,000 years ago, the Antarctica continent was flash frozen during a sudden pole shift, which cut off the pre-Adamites' outposts around the world from their main base. Now the reptilians would become dominant in planetary affairs. Goode said, quote, "But after these cataclysms that occurred on Earth, the pre-Adamites and the reptilians sort of had a truce or a treaty, and after that point, the reptilians were pretty much controlled all of Antarctica and the pre-Adamites had zero ability to get access to their ancient technology. Their libraries, everything was down there." End quote. Hybrids of the pre-Adamites were able to escape the catastrophe in their global outposts, but those of the pure bloodline were stuck in Antarctica in their giant motherships, according to Goode. Quote, "This pre-Adamite civilization controlled the entire planet. What little resources they had, they were able to control the planet. And after this last cataclysm occurred, none of the survivors, pre-Adamite survivors, had access to their technology." End quote. So we mentioned the group that was in Asia, the pre-Adamite group, and there was another one in South America, Central America. They could no longer visit or communicate with each other. They were separated. The elongated skulls found in South and Central America trace back to the pre-Adamite hybrids who ruled over their colonies in these areas. Quote, "In South and Central America is where they had set up most of their enclaves, and they had been set up around the other pre-Adamite structures that were now destroyed because of the cataclysm. There were huge earthquakes that basically liquefied the ground, and a lot of the buildings, massive buildings, they had just fell apart and fell and sunk into the ground. They were running the hemisphere. They were mixing their genetics with some of the indigenous people of South and Central America. That's why we have elongated skulls, beings that have a different colored skin but different genetic mix." End quote. The two major pre-Adamite colonies, one spanning Asia and Europe, while the other encompassed South and Central America, vied for each other in competition between the bloodlines, which continues today through two major factions of the Illuminati, as Goode says. Quote, "And they had always had some sort of competition between these two bloodline groups even before the cataclysm. This whole bloodline of these Cabal or Illuminati type people, they trace their bloodlines through these pre-Adamites." End quote. If we accept that reptilians are another extraterrestrial group that exercise great influence from behind the scenes through their own hybrids, then we can see that the Earth's hidden rulers are divided into distinct factions with a long history of conflict stemming from rivalries. This is perhaps nowhere better exemplified than in the Book of Enoch, which describes different groups of angels at war with one another. In the Cosmic Disclosure interview, Goode and Wilcock exchanged the following on this subject. David. So in the Book of Enoch, they're describing this group as the fallen angels. Corey. Uh-huh. David. So you are saying these pre-Adamites with the elongated skulls, that is the fallen angel storyline. Corey. It is the fallen angel storyline. Yes. Many of the original refugees, pre-Adamites, are currently in stasis in their motherships, buried under the Antarctic ice, as Corey Goode explains. Quote, "Well, they had a number of beings that were in stasis. The information I received was that the surviving pre-Adamites, the bloodline that originally came from the other planet, had put themselves in stasis before this cataclysm occurred about 12,800 years ago. They have not awoken them yet. They're trying to decide what they're going to do." End quote. Goode then goes into some detail about the limited disclosure plan, which involves sanitizing the archaeological site of anything having to do with extraterrestrial life. Quote, "Now another interesting note, we do have these archaeologists and employees of various universities that are down there excavating and documenting all of this. But what they have done, they being the Cabal, I guess you'll say, they have used these large electromagnetic submarines that are discussed earlier to take a lot of archaeological items that they had found in other digs that they were keeping suppressed from humanity. They had them in huge warehouses." End quote. They were taking some of these artifacts down to Antarctica and seeding them, and this one large dig that these archaeologists are going to make public. They are also removing anybody that does not look human, and a lot of the human bodies, they do not look like they were slaves. They have tunics that have gold thread weaved into the tunics. They look royal. The next step in this limited disclosure plan, according to Goode, is to slowly reveal in a many decades long process the existence of secret space programs. Quote, so they're planning on giving us a sanitized disclosure, and then over time they will disclose the military industrial complex secret space program. And after they do that, they'll say, oh, by the way, yeah, we've got this fairly advanced secret space program, and while we've been out to other planets, we've found very similar ruins as we've found in Antarctica. End quote. So they're going to try to trickle the information down over decades and not immediately tell us about these ships they found and the high technology and non-humans. What Goode has been told and personally witnessed in Antarctica tells a lot about Antarctica's secret history and the role of different extraterrestrial groups who established control over this vast icy continent, almost double the size of the lower 48 US states. Goode also leaves us with a profound question to contemplate. What happens when the pre-Adamites are awakened in their stasis chambers and discover our current global civilization is very different to what they may desire? This has been Michael Salla with XO News TV. Secret presidential memorandum issued to declassify anti-aging and free energy technologies. This is part 2 in a 3-part series. According to Secret Space Program whistleblower Corey Goode, President Donald Trump issued a highly classified memorandum soon after his January 20th inauguration, ordering the release of a group of classified patents concerning anti-aging and health, along with free energy technologies. The top secret memorandum was sent to the Department of Defense and the intelligence community, and due to its classification status, it will not be accessible to major media for reporting. The information received from Goode comes from a senior official in an interagency secret space program comprising the US Air Force, National Reconnaissance Office, National Security Agency, Defense Intelligence Agency, which he describes as the Military Industrial Complex Secret Space Program, or MIC-SSP. The official, whom he calls Sigmund, is investigating Goode's claims and conducting an information exchange with Goode in the process. On March 16, Goode briefed me about his ongoing meetings with Sigmund and/or his 2 subordinates. The information provided by Goode was originally slated for release in an article, Endgame 3, as the sequel to the popular Endgame 2 article and video. However, due to the urgency of releasing this information without delay, it was passed on to me to get it out now. In one of his meetings with Sigmund and/or his subordinates in late January, Goode was told about Trump issuing a presidential memorandum to declassify over 1,000 patents from a pool of over 5,000. Most of the 1,000 patents deal with the anti-aging and health technologies, yet some deal with material science and biochemistry, and a few involve free energy inventions. These technologies are widely used in a number of secret space programs, and the patents dealing with these have been repressed under national security orders. The US Patents and Trademark Office has issued federal regulations that govern when patents are classified on the grounds of national security and subsequently withheld from the general public. Quote, whenever the publication or disclosure of an invention by the publication of an application or by the granting of a patent is, in the opinion of the head of an interested government agency, determined to be detrimental to national security, the Commissioner for Patents at the United States Patent and Trademark Office must issue a secrecy order and withhold the grant of a patent for such period as the national interest requires. A patent will not be issued on the application as long as the secrecy order is in force. If a secrecy order is applied to an international application, the application will not be forwarded to the International Bureau as long as the secrecy order is in force. End quote. When a Department of Defense entity or a member of the intelligence community consider a patent to be a threat to national security, then the Patents Commissioner will issue a secrecy order preventing the patent from being publicly released. The current number of patents that have been classified are approximately 5,700 according to the US Patent and Trademark Office, which matches the information given to Goode by Sigmund. The number of secret patents that are declassified each year has averaged roughly 0.5% annually. Goode learned that the Pentagon and intelligence agencies told Trump it would take 10 years to release them, but Trump told them to get it done within 2 to 3 years. Evidence for Trump taking the bold step of declassifying secret patents as quickly as possible can be found in his inauguration speech. Towards the end of the speech, Trump uttered one sentence that contained his most developed vision of the future for America and its citizenry, which would result from the kind of declassification memorandum Goode was told about. Trump said, quote, "We stand at the birth of a new millennium, ready to unlock the mysteries of space, to free the Earth from the miseries of disease, and to harness the energies, industries, and technologies of tomorrow." End quote. If Trump succeeds in having over 1,000 of these declassified over the next 2 to 3 years, it would represent 20% of the total. This would be a staggering average yearly increase of up to 2,000% over previous years. Trump's secret memorandum to the Department of Defense and the intelligence community is aimed at ultimately having the Patents Commissioner, who is currently Drew Hirschfeld, lift the secrecy orders issued by his predecessors on the 1,000 patents marked for declassification. Furthermore, monitoring the US Patents and Trademark Office's records of secrecy orders rescinded for 2017 will offer a concrete means of verifying that Trump did indeed issue such a memorandum. According to Goode, most of the secret patents ordered to be declassified deal with anti-aging and health. In particular, he said that telomere technology is very advanced in classified projects and can enable healthy cell reproduction without aging or disease. This is consistent with the claims of retired aerospace engineer William Tompkins, who says that in early 2016 he was told by Navy officials that anti-aging technologies would be released in a 2-year period. Tompkins was involved in the original corporate development of anti-aging technologies during his time as a systems engineer at TRW from 1967 to 1971. These technologies were subsequently used in secret space programs which routinely used personnel for 20-year and back programs that Goode and other whistleblowers claimed they were subjected to. The patents for these technologies developed at TRW are likely part of the 1,000 patents marked for declassification under Trump's memorandum. Furthermore, Tompkins identified the San Diego headquarters of the Scripps Institute as being heavily involved in the study of anti-aging technologies, and it will be a major player in releasing these classified technologies to the public. Support for Goode and Tompkins' testimony regarding classified anti-aging technologies comes from geneticists who have recently publicly identified the genes that control the aging process. In stunning experiments, the results of which have been released in peer-reviewed scientific journals, geneticists have demonstrated that they were able to reverse the aging process to varying degrees of success. The lead genetic scientist in publicly announced age reversal studies is Dr. David Sinclair, who discussed in a November 2014 interview the results of his genetic experiments first conducted on mice. Quote, "We've discovered genes that control how the body fights against aging, and these genes, if you turn them on just the right way, they can have very powerful effects, even reversing aging, at least in mice so far. We fed them a molecule that's called NMN, and this reversed aging completely within just a week of treatment in the muscle. And now we are looking to reverse all aspects of aging, if possible." End quote. Declassifying anti-aging patents would revolutionize the medical and health industry, which have already made significant inroads into understanding and reversing the aging process. Another industry that would be revolutionized by Trump's secret memorandum is the energy sector. declassifying free energy inventions would revolutionize the automotive and aviation industries and make it easier for private industries such as SpaceX to develop far more efficient and advanced space propulsion technologies. Most importantly, the release of free energy inventions will effectively end the power and influence of the oil industry. In a surprising case of synchronicity, one of the oil lobby's biggest supporters, David Rockefeller, died on March 20 at the age of 101. Rockefeller was notably known for his staunch support of maintaining the secrecy status quo. The importance of Trump's memorandum to the Pentagon and intelligence community to declassify secret patents cannot be underestimated due to the revolutionary changes it would usher in. Opposition to such changes help explain the rumors that Trump would not be allowed to take the office of the president despite the 2016 election result. According to the information received by Goode from Sigmund, Trump was going to be assassinated before or during his presidential inauguration. However, the Pentagon in response threatened to launch an open military coup if Trump was assassinated. The CIA, the NSA, and the Department of Homeland Security in particular were warned that they would be surrounded by US military personnel and that top CIA, NSA, and Department of Homeland Security officials would end up being arrested for facilitating the assassination. Goode estimates that approximately 80% of the personnel in these civilian agencies are cabal or deep state controlled, while approximately 50% of the FBI is under white hat control. He was told that these agencies refused to give the same briefings as given to President Reagan about the military-industrial complex secret space program and the handful of alien groups known to them. The impending declassification of over 1,000 secret patents will clearly help Trump succeed in revitalizing the US manufacturing industry and providing millions of jobs. It appears that the release of these patents is timed to coincide with impending disclosures regarding discoveries in Antarctica, where advanced technologies have allegedly been discovered and which will have a revolutionary impact on a number of major industries. This is part 2 in a 3-part series. This has been Michael Salla with Exo News TV.